Okay. The purpose of these videos is going to be talking about healthcare, specifically what role healthcare plays in the free market or in socialization or whatever. But since in the United States this is such a big topic now, I'd like to post my views on healthcare. And this is going to be in a couple of videos, but in this first video I want to explain certain concepts of, namely, what a free market is, what the HMO system is, and to ask the question, is the HMO system a free market system or not? And the answer, of course, is no. But let me get to that. First, I've looked at some other videos and with people attacking capitalistic policies, and it seems to me they don't understand what the free market is. So I want to take a moment to explain what a free market is. A free market, the capitalist system that so many people hate, essentially means that businesses are allowed to freely enter or leave the market and to compete with each other for market space, for business, for people like you and me to sell their product and service. And this concept revolves around the fact that the government doesn't intervene. No regulation, no intervention, none. It can't be a free market if the government can intervene whenever the fuck it wants. Um, but the historical thing is, and I said this in another video, is people are describing acts like government favoring business as capitalism, and that's ridiculous. That would be like me accusing a communist of saying, well, in all communism there's mass genocide, and they kill millions of their own people. That has happened in pretty much every communist country in the world, but a true communist would come back and say, no, 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 that's not a tenet of true communism, which has never been achieved, by the way. But that's people twisting communism for their own selfish needs, which is actually true. In true communism, there's no such thing as genocide, and there's no such thing as a government true communism. But I digress. In other words, though, in capitalism, the government can't intervene. And like I said, in another video, there were people saying that corporatism is a form of capitalism, and that's not true. And I use the analogy of describing moves in chess. When you move a piece forward or backward in chess, both moving the piece forward and moving it backward constitutes moving your piece. No one would argue that moving a rook forward constitutes a chess move, but moving a rook backward doesn't constitute a chess move. Both of them count as a move. So this is the idea that people don't understand what government intervention means. Government intervention can mean both intervening to help a business or to hurt a business. Both are forms of government intervention, just like moving a chess piece forward or backward is a move, okay? However, so many people believe that helping the government helping a business is capitalism, and that's not true. That's a bunch of bullshit, and that's a stupid, idiotic concept that they'll throw out there because they just don't like capitalism and they're going to make shit up to argue against it. Okay, so I wanted to address that first. That government intervention, any type, whether it's to help business or to hurt business, is intervention. Okay, but in this first video, I want to discuss the HMO system and specifically the history of the HMO system, because now you see people saying we need the public option in America, we need single-payer healthcare, we need, we need real competition. We need government to provide that competition because this evil HMO system, which is the spawn of the free market by most people's opinions, is robbing us blind. And it's true. The HMO system is bad and it's robbing us blind. But to say that this is a result of the free market system shows how many people will argue against a concept like an HMO and never actually take time to look up what the fuck an HMO is and specifically how they got as powerful as they did today. So let me give you a very brief history lesson. Okay. Before the HMO system became powerful in 1973 because of the HMO Act signed into law by a very bad conservative president, Richard Nixon, who wasn't very much a conservative, but there were many ways to pay for your health care, and most of those ways resulted in what is still known today as a PPO organization, where your business will contract with a doctor and you'll set prices for services and he'll provide the services for a company. PPOs exist not as greatly as they HMOs, but they are out there. Many people don't have the option to use them though. Okay, and so before the HMOs got very powerful, there was this concept that either you would just go and talk to a doctor and pay for basic services, and you had health insurance similar to a PPO where you would cover catastrophes, like broken leg, heart attack, and that thing. But either you would pay doctors, straight up for services like buying groceries at the store. You would just pay for what you needed, like for a sore throat or something when you got sick, or you would have an organization that would contract with a doctor who would set specific prices and specific things that you could come in for, and you would always know what you were paying, and he couldn't screw you or he couldn't raise your rate because that doctor would be competing for business with the organization. Okay, that's not what an HMO system is. The HMO system arose in the early 20th century on the grounds of this preventive care idea. And preventive care is important. It is obviously important to helping keep people healthy, but HMOs no longer believe in preventive care, which is why it's bad. But HMOs began in the beginning of the 20th century, and they, in specific professions, notably teachers, were offered HMOs before anyone else. And the concept was this: if teachers in, I think it was 1915 or 1920, paid $6 a month, they would be guaranteed a certain number of hospital days completely paid for during the year and certain doctor's visits. So this was the originality of the HMO. Now here's where many people don't look up the history of the HMO and don't know this. The HMOs back then weren't protected by the government, which means they had to compete with, like what I just explained, the organizations where you would contract with a doctor and he would pay for services. So you had a choice. You could contract with a doctor, you could go talk to a doctor, or you could sign up for an HMO and have that choice of the preventive care idea. Okay, well, this is the free market at work. By 1970, there were less than 50 HMOs left in the country. Today, there's over 1,300 if you look at the state-by-state basis. Okay, that tells me that people, looked at the concept of HMO, or they looked at the service that they were getting and they didn't like it and they rejected it. So the free markets were working. The HMO wasn't a system people liked. They preferred to contract with a doctor, simply pay for catastrophe insurance, and so the HMOs were failing. Okay, this is where government intervened to run your health care. And this is important for people to understand when they argue for something like the public option. In 1970s, there was a guy named Paul Elwood who ran an HMO, and he realized that his business was on death's doorstep. So what did he do? He went to Richard Nixon, and if you see the movie Sicko, Michael Moore will play 45 seconds of Nixon talking to this guy, and he'll explain how Elwood essentially convinced Richard Nixon to intervene in the healthcare industry, which is true. Richard Nixon intervened, and this was supported by Democrats, by the way. Ted Kennedy thought that this was a stepping stone towards single-payer healthcare, so thank you, Teddy, for creating the HMO system, or helping to anyway. But this is when government intervened with the HMO Act of 1973, and it included massive government intervention. Okay, it prevented states from restricting HMOs from competing, which is hysterical because there's nothing, this is a 10th Amendment issue. If the states don't want HMOs to compete, they have the right to restrict them until the Constitution says otherwise. But most importantly, it gave subsidies and grants and loans if you were willing to start up an HMO, which is a very bad thing because it was a government dole again to start up a company, which shouldn't happen in the free markets. So this is how the free market system grew, that these free markets displaced traditional insurance because employers thought that they could save money through the system. And granted, employers have the right to do it, but the problem is when HMOs grew so large and with all these regulations, you start to see the things that people complain about today. They'll deny your claim. You don't have the choice to buy over state lines and things like this. But I'm bringing this up because now today, as I said before, people are complaining about HMOs and saying this is the evil of the free market. This is why capitalism doesn't work. Guess what, people? This was the first form of socialism. Like I said, HMOs were dying out. The free market rejected them, and liberal politicians and even conservative politicians decided, nope, we have to intervene, we have to save these HMOs, and consider it no different than the bailouts the banks got last year, okay? This was government intervention doing what it does best, taking away people's choices in the name of giving them more choices and making the system worse for everyone else. Because what happened? It gave the HMOs the ability to thrive over the traditional forms of insurance and forced companies to get on this insurance because it was subsidized through government loans and government and taxpayer money, and so it made the HMOs the most powerful organizations, and that's why HMOs are prevalent today, because they're protected and because they got help from the government. So just those, this is my first video on it, and I just want, this is the secret history of the HMO, but this is for all you people who say government intervention can only help it. Well, government intervention really fucked us, because government intervention created the system that all you morons rail against today, a system that is certainly not a free market system, that was being rejected by the free market, but the government decided it had to intervene. So again, this is the history of the HMO in the first video on healthcare in general.